immediate company business. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Well, welcome back to another edition of Jim Brown's Sky Blue History podcast. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, Claudio.
Yes, it's well. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. I'm okay.
Good.
Disappointing result at the weekend, but I decided after listening to the CWR after-match phone-in, after 10 minutes of that, I was ready to slip my wrists. So I turned it off and turned off social media on Saturday night and Sunday because I'm just fed up with all the moaners and groaners, really.
But do you think that's because there was this high expectation and we've just had a bit of a drab start, really, haven't we? I mean,
well, to be honest, I never had high expectations. I don't know what people are basing those high expectations on. I really don't.
I think it's because of the noise that came out of the club with the aim high and all this business. And it's one of those, isn't it? We look at it last season, we finished 9th, didn't we? And we just have to see how it goes. For me personally, it's not about the losing, it's performances. And I just feel they're a bit flat at the minute. And I think if you're on your edge of your seat and you're excited and you feel like you've been in games and it feels like you may have had a chance to win it, and there's lots of incidences and attacking football, you kind of forgive it, don't you, when you get the wrong end of the result. But I feel we haven't got going at all yet. And that's where the frustration is for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I understand that. I think we've been spoilt over the last 2 seasons. You know, you could count the number of bad performances on one hand almost. Up to the end of last season, we've been spoiled, and I think we've also lost, some of the flair players. You know, whether it's O'Hare, Hamer, Gyökeres, and Casey. We aren't as a flair side as we perhaps were.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That's 3 big players to lose, and they were.
But I think the other point about Saturday is that the first half we were the better team. Mm-hmm. You know, if one of those chances had gone in, one of the Sims chances had gone in, it'd been a completely different game. Norwich had 1 shot. Okay, they dominated midfield. That was, you expect that with a side like Norwich, I think. But we had our half chances to pull level, and I think that. Yeah, I think that's enough to be said about Saturday.
Yes. I agree. Well, tonight, the main feature is we're going to talk about Reg Matthews and Pauline Hughes, the mother of a friend of mine, Paul Hughes, suggested Reg because it was her favourite player. So we're going to, before we talk about Reg, and Jim is going to fill us in big time on the history of Reg Matthews, and he was a star, basically. We're going to have a brief chat about our favourite keeper. So you go first, Jim. Who's your favourite?
Well, it's Bill Glazier. People won't be surprised about that choice from me. Bill was a massive player for Coventry City, almost 400 games. He but for his broken leg, I think he'd have been in the England 66 World Cup squad. He was a massive influence in our promotion in 67, having come back from the broken leg. And you could almost say he was one of the key bulwarks in our defence in those first 2 ugly seasons in the top flight. And he was always on the fringe of international honours, but for the form of Gordon Banks and I suppose Peter Bonetti as well, Bill was probably the 3rd choice, vying with people like Alex Stepney and John Jackson, these sort of players. He was one of the top goalkeepers in the 1st division for almost all his career. He made his rickets. Yeah, I can remember his rickets. But he was solid, absolutely solid.
Wasn't he? Was he a record signing when we signed him from Crystal
He was
Palace?
a world record for a goalkeeper.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, £35,000 from Crystal Palace.
Incredible.
And he went straight into the first team, and he made it. He made a big difference straight away. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'm 10 years behind you, aren't I? Because obviously there's slight age difference. And it's for me, it's Jim Blythe. I think he was just a great keeper. As I was growing up, I just thought he was so athletic. I was so disappointed he didn't play for Scotland in the '78 World Cup. I felt he was way better than Alan Rough. I mean, even David Harvey of Leeds United was way better than Alan Rough. And he was just so athletic and strong, and he used to make some incredible saves. A bit showboaty saves, you could say, in today's football.
Yeah.
But he used to throw himself around, very brave, but for a bad back would have been another world record goalkeeper signing, wouldn't he? Because he was going to go to Man United for a world record fee for a goalkeeper.
He was for over 400,000 until they found out about his back.
Yeah, which blighted his career, really, didn't it? In the end, Jim Blythe for me. For me, Bill Glazier, I saw, because of my age, I saw the back end of his career. I remember his testimonial against the World Cup 11. I remember that. I think it was a 5-5 draw. I can remember Bill Glazier stepping up and taking a penalty. I remember that.
I think actually it was a 6-6 draw.
6-6. Yeah. But I do remember that, and I was in awe watching all these great stars, which some of them had retired by then.
And the other thing, Claudio, he's a lovely man, Bill. And he's got this sort of almost an upper class accent, even now to this day. He sounds like he's just walked out of a London club after playing roulette all night. He really, and he's a very funny man.
I think my dad said, I'm sure he said that, he reckoned he had enormous hands.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
And of course, I mean, even Jim Blythe to some extent, they rarely wore gloves. It's
right.
A bit of spit on the palm of your hands. That was it.
So let's get on to tonight's subject, because we talk about world record fee. Well, when Reg Matthews left Coventry City for Chelsea in November '56, he was a world record fee as well, £22,000, which I think it was double the previous record. But Reg, I only saw him play. I never saw him play in his pomp, if you like. I never saw him play for Coventry City. I saw him play for Derby County at Highfield Rd in 1966 in a League Cup tie. And obviously that you can't judge, a player on what he would have been 30, 34 years old then, and, getting near the twilight of his career. But I think Reg's story is almost a Roy of the Rovers story. He went from Coventry City reserves to becoming the club's first ever England international in 18 months.
That's incredible.
Phenomenal story. And don't forget, he was a 3rd division goalkeeper. To break into the England side as a 3rd division player hadn't been heard of since before the war. He had to be special to get into the England squad. And you'll notice in my backdrop tonight, I've got a picture of Reg in action, tipping a ball round the post. Typical Reg picture. So should we talk about how he came to Coventry and about his career? He went to, he's a Coventry-born lad, born in 1932, and he grew up in the shadow of Camden Road, actually, and actually played rugby at Barker Butt School. but his first love obviously was football, and Billy Frith spotted him playing as a 15-year-old for Coventry schoolboys, and he started playing with the Modern Machines team, which was a team in the Coventry Works League. It was actually a guy called Harry Weston ran a company called Modern Machine Tools, and he basically ran this team as Coventry City's nursery team.
Right.
And they had lots of players who came through from Modern Machines to the Coventry first team. I think when I interviewed Reg in his latter years, I think he told me that 5 or 6 of the team he played as a 16-year-old came through to the first team. People like Frank Austin, Bill Bradbury, Lowell Harvey, and so he was playing in Coventry Works League as a 16-year-old. The club signed him on professional forms around about 1950, and he started playing for the city's A team in a very competitive league, what's called the United Counties League, against sides like Corby Town, Spalding, Peterborough Reserves, and it's quite a high standard, and real men as well. Playing against men as a 16, 17-year-old must have been quite hard. He made his reserve debut in September 52, I think, and towards the end of that season, he got a chance. After only 4 reserve games, Harry Storer picked him for the first team, and he made his debut in March 53 at Southend. And as
to get picked by Harry Storer says a lot, because Harry Storer knew his stuff, didn't he, when it came to management?
He certainly did.
Yeah.
And City had a lot of goalkeepers in those days. They had Alf Wood, who I think he left in 53 to go to Northampton, but they had Peter Taylor, the great Peter Taylor, who joined up with Brian Clough to become a fantastic management partnership. They had a guy called Billy Gilbert, and they had another local lad called Derek Spencer, who
did Alf Wood play till he was about 47 or something? Did he come back and play?
He came back. He came back actually after Reg left. He came back and he actually played for after Reg left, and he played as I think he was over 40. Wasn't as old as 47. And he played a few games in the 4th Division promotion season.
Oh, right.
When he was actually a coach at the club, but with injuries and whatever, they pulled him. They brought him into the first team. So 53-4 season. So what? Reg will be 20, just coming up to 21. He was first choice at the start of the season. He played how many games? He played a handful of games, maybe 5 games, and then it was back to the reserves. Peter Taylor came in and replaced him. But that you're talking about the mid-50s now. City, it was a pretty depressing time for the club. The end of the 53-4 season, gates were down to 5,000 and 6,000. And then 54. So Reg is really a regular in the reserves that season. But the following season, Harry Storer had got sacked in the middle of the previous season. And in the summer of 54, Jack Fairbrother came in as manager. The team that Jack built, they always say. And Peter Taylor started the first 10 games, and then suddenly Fairbrother promoted Reg. And his first game was away at Walsall, and that was always a tough game. They were real bruisers at Walsall. And you read the match report, and Reg got a real battering from their forwards. He was black and blue in the dressing room afterwards. But we got a 0-0 draw, and he had a fabulous game. And that was it. He was there. He never got dropped again. So he was 22 when he sort of cemented his place in the first team. He was getting rave reviews every week. And what would it have been? So came in the September. The January, we were drawn against Huddersfield in the FA Cup. They were a first division side, drawn away at Leeds Road. And Reg had the game of his life, and it was televised. Whether it was a Pathé News or maybe it was the BBC Saturday night show, and Reg got national interest because he had an absolute blinder. We got a 3-3 draw, took them back to Highfield Road for a replay. Unfortunately, we lost the replay, but Reg was in the national eye, and within a week he'd been picked to play in the first ever England under-23 international, which was against your motherland, Italy, at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
And he, so I was looking at the lineup last night of the England under-23 side that day. Duncan Edwards, 18, already a major star. Yeah. Johnny Haynes, only 20. He was running games in the first division at the age of 20. So it's a really strong side. And actually, if you go on YouTube and put in England, Italy under 23s, 1955, you can watch about 4 minutes of the game. And Reg is caught on camera making a fantastic save in the second half.
I've seen it, and it is great footage as well. Those old Pathé News, fantastic. In fact, I started watching that and ended up spending an hour and a half just going through the reels because there's some great stuff on there.
Some great stuff, isn't there? So they won that 5-1, and he was a star. And a few weeks later, he was chosen again to play in Scotland against their under-23s at Shawfield Stadium. Do you know whose ground that was?
No.
That was the home of Clyde.
Wow.
who were a first division side at the time. And England won 6-0. And the story behind it is, right, so Duncan Edwards is still only 18.
Yeah.
The right half, a guy called Stan Anderson, who was a useful player for Sunderland for many years, he got injured in the first 10 minutes and had to go off. And they brought a substitute on, which they had substitutes in those days, just one. Right. And Duncan Edwards moved to centre forward. He was so versatile, and he scored a hat-trick. But unfortunately, that one's not on Pathé News, not on YouTube. So, but the other funny story about that one is that they organised the night before the Scotland game. They organised a little warm-up practice game at Ibrox against Rangers.
Yeah.
But the problem was Reg missed his train and didn't arrive in time to play in the practice game. So they didn't have another goalkeeper there. So this Stan Anderson, who was injured the following night, he went in goal. It's a great story anyway.
So what was, as a goalkeeper, what was Reg's playing style like as a keeper? What was his attributes?
If you read the match reports, the contemporary match reports, they always describe him as cat-like. You know, he was only 5'10", but he could throw himself all over the place to stop shots and tip shots over the bar. But he also was famous for dominating his penalty area. You know, he would, if a corner came over, he would be out for it, and you know, catching it above 6 foot plus centre forwards. And if the ball came in the box, his defenders knew that Reg would be coming out, and they had to watch their backs, because he would just go through them to get the ball. So he was, and if you watch that that Pathé News of the Italy game, and he throws the ball out a lot.
Yes,
and I think that was quite unusual in those days. He'd throw a ball a good 20 or 30 yards to find his man.
So I mean, well, that's interesting, because there's other keepers that era who did similar, and also because the rules have changed so often over the years with goalkeepers, there's a lot of running and bouncing with the ball, isn't there, as well?
Yes.
which is weird. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think you can do that now, can you? You can't just keep bouncing it and running around the penalty area with it. But I don't know, they seemed to want to get the game going, didn't they, basically?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. There wasn't any time wasting, or it didn't seem to be time wasting. They just wanted to get on with it. I'm not sure if they were winning 1-0 with 5 minutes left, they'd be as anxious, but you don't know.
But they did used to just kick it as well long, didn't they? There's no messing about. It was get the ball, get on with it. But
no.
Well, to be honest, I think I'd prefer that nowadays sometimes.
So going back to his sort of timeline, in the summer of '55, the City had signed up Jesse Carver as the manager. This is the man from Italy with the camel coat and the slick hair, on £3.5 grand a year, £70 a week, when the players were getting £20 a week.
Yeah.
So Jesse came in with George Rayner as his number 2. Peter Taylor got the message. He was sold to Borough, and he went on to have he actually went to a high level. Borough were in the second division, so he went on to have a good playing career. And as for Reg, well, his form just got better and better and better. He was getting, if you read the match reports, he rarely made an error. There were very few goals were down to him, and he saved City, week after week from a hammering. He was in the England selectors' eyes. And in the February, he got called up for another under-23 cap against Scotland. Then it was followed up with a call up for the England B side against Scotland. And in the March, he played at Southampton for the B international side against Switzerland. And he was the man of the match. If you read the contemporary reports, it says that Matthews stood practically alone in the first half as the Swiss ran riot. And the journalist summed it up saying he may have played himself into the full international side. And sure enough, 10 days later, he was called up for the England full side for his first cap at Hampden Park against Scotland. You look at the lineup, and again, Duncan Edwards there. He got his first cap a year earlier. He was in the side. Johnny Haynes was in the side. Tom Finney was playing. Billy Wright. Really, a star-studded team for the 1950s. Apparently, I can't tell you the source for this, but I did read many years ago. I made the note that he was shaking so much in the changing room before the match when he heard the Hampden roar. 134,000 at Hampden that day. So he was shaking so much that the trainer had to give him smelling salts before he fainted.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Because the other thing about the dressing room, Reg always smoked before and at half time. He smoked a cigarette.
Right.
That he was a big smoker.
I think Jimmy Greaves did that, didn't he?
I think he did. Yeah. So he played that Scotland game. That's on YouTube as well, if anybody wants to see that. 1956. He was, as I said before, he was the first third division player since the war to play for England. And it was a 1-1 draw. And the goal that he conceded was actually a miss hit. It came off Graham Leggett's shin and looped over Reg, almost like Callum O'Hare's goal at Wembley, I think.
Right.
So there was no fault, no blame put on Reg for that. And he was retained for the next international, which was against Brazil at Wembley, Brazil's first ever trip to England. And again, it's on YouTube. And the commentator says, "Oh, look at Brazil in their short shorts." England have still got the baggy shorts almost down to the knee, and Brazil have got these skimpy blue. Will it be blue or green? I'm not sure. Skimpy shorts, anyway. But that was a classic match. England won 4-2.
So at the time, he's still a City keeper.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Brilliant. I've just got the England team up here. So you got obviously Reg in goal, Roger Byrne, Billy Wright, Jeff Hall, Jimmy Dickinson, Duncan Edwards, Bill Perry, Tom Finney, Johnny Haynes, Nat Lofthouse, Tommy Taylor. Some big names in there.
That was for the Scotland game, was it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, for the Brazil game, they recalled Stanley Matthews at the age of 41. So you had two Matthews playing. And Matthews was up against the guy that was supposed to be the best left back in the world, Jalma Santos, and he took him to the cleaners. England won 4-2. Reg was beaten by a wicked deflection, according to the match report, and then a vicious 20-yard shot from Didi, which Reg seemed to catch, and then it flew in off his shoulder. So he's won 2 caps. England unbeaten, and England go off on a summer tour. And Reg gets his 3rd cap in Sweden. Gets again rave reviews. He got an injury in that game and missed the next one against Finland, but came back in Berlin against West Germany. And of course, I don't know how good your history is on football, Claudio, but West Germany were the world champions.
Yeah. Well, very controversial. Very controversial world champions.
Very controversial. But they were the champions, and we were going into their backyard, 110,000 crowd, including quite a lot of British servicemen.
Yeah.
Because we had a big presence in Germany at the time.
Of course.
11 years after the war. England won 3-1. Again, watch it on YouTube. Duncan Edwards scores a phenomenal goal. I know we're talking about Reg Matthews, but Duncan Edwards would have been, but for the Munich air crash, he would have been an England regular right through to the late 60s, I'm sure. He'd have been in the 66 World Cup team. You might never have heard of Bobby Moore.
I was going to say that. He probably would have been captain, to be honest.
Yeah.
Definitely. I was just looking at the England team against Brazil as well, with Ronnie Clayton, which I believe was at Blackburn Rovers, and was my father-in-law's favourite player, because they were Blackburn Rovers fans. Yeah. I've got a lot of his memorabilia with Ronnie's signature on it.
He was one club man, Blackburn legend. Yeah. Yeah.
With Playboy looks, I think, at the time is how they referred to him.
And I remember I remember seeing him at Highfield Road for Blackburn in the 66-7 promotion season. He was still playing then. So, of course, you've got a third division player playing for England. He's got 4 caps. The jungle tom-toms are going on. There's people really interested in signing Reg. A lot of rumours flying about that summer. Reg is going to go. Oh, and the board, there were bids coming in. 4 or 5 first division clubs were supposed to be interested in him, and the board said he's not for sale. And in fact, Earl Shanks, who was the chairman at the time, who ran a timber yard in Coventry, gave Reg a job on the sales team
to boost his wage. He'd have been on. Well, they've got a maximum wage, haven't they, in those days?
Absolutely. £20 in the winter. I think maybe £15 in the summer. So Reg was on the payroll at Shanks. So can you imagine it? We've got Coventry City have got England's goalkeeper. Can you just imagine it? We're a third division side, and he's the England keeper.
I mean, in those days as well, because I presume Walter Winterbottom was the manager.
Yeah, but he didn't always pick the team.
No, that's right, because there was like a selection committee, wasn't there? It was only when Alf Ramsey came in that it all changed, didn't it? Where he took it on and said, "I'm doing it all myself," basically. Yeah. So I mean, it just seems like an extraordinary way of picking the team. You have it's a bit like what the cricket do, don't they? It's basically.
Yeah, and I think what you found was that the selection committee was made up of club chairmen, so they'd all have their own player who they'd push to get an England game. So very often you had strange choices playing in the England team, and not always based on their England form, or often based just on their club form.
Yeah.
So if you had a striker who'd got, I don't know, 20 goals by Christmas, he'd be in the England team. So right. He came back from the summer tour, a little job at Shanks for the summer to boost his wages. And in the meantime, Jesse Carver had gone back to Italy. Yeah. And another new manager arrived, a guy called Harry Warren from Southend.
I can't say Jesse Carver as well, because I believe Juventus manager, wasn't he? I think he was, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He won Scudetto with Juventus.
Because my dad came to England around about the same time, the mid-50s. Right. So that must be unusual. So the manager of Juventus then comes over and manages the team he's supporting in.
Yeah.
It's totally random because obviously he's new to the area, and then he goes back and manages his team he supports in Italy, which I think is quite fun.
Well, it was massive news when he came to Coventry. How the hell have Coventry got,
I know,
Jesse Carver, but he only stayed for 6 months. But by New Year's Eve, he'd gone. He went back to Italy and managed Lazio.
So I still think it's incredible that he ever came here. That's
yeah.
And of course, Rainer at he was a Swedish manager, wasn't he, as well? Wasn't he? Is that right?
Yeah, he was. And when Carver left, Rainer stayed on as the caretaker manager. And in the summer they brought in Harry Warren, and everybody thought, Rainer will be on his way. But he stuck around for a few months, and then he got offered the Swedish job and went back and took them to the World Cup final against Brazil in '58.
It is incredible that these two guys were at Coventry City. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, it's like Jose Mourinho turning up for 6 months and then followed by, I don't know, somebody who managed Argentina to the World Cup final.
Yeah. Pochettino. Yes.
I don't know, yeah. Bizarre, absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
And rarely gets mentioned. That's the thing.
Yeah, it does. It's a great story. It's a great story. So, so the new season started, and the rumours are rife about Reg. Reg is going to go. I think the fans are almost resigned. In September, he got picked for his fifth cap in Belfast against Northern Ireland, and he didn't have a great game. He was blamed for it was a 1-1 draw, and he was blamed for dropping a long throw at the feet of Jimmy McIlroy, who scored the equaliser. For the next game, the next home international game against Wales, he was dropped, and a guy called Ted Ditchburn of Tottenham came in to replace him. And I think that was the sort of spark for something to happen, because early November, Reg put in a transfer request, and the board discussed it, and Shanks told the Coventry Telegraph that Reg had been asking for a move since April, since he got picked for England against Scotland. And the board met, and they reluctantly agreed to his transfer request. And Chelsea apparently had been given first refusal back in the April. And the directors put a price of 25,000 on Reg's head, which was a massive fee at the time. And Reg said he would prefer to go to a Midland club. He definitely didn't want to go north. But Chelsea were the ones who pursued him. Their manager was Ted Drake, their legendary manager, who'd won them the league in '55. That was only 18 months earlier. So they're a big club, had the money, and finally a fee of 22,000 was agreed, which, as I said, it was a world record for a goalkeeper. The strange thing was, Reg continued to live in Coventry. He used to train with City and travel down to Stamford Bridge on the Friday to play for Chelsea on the Saturday. And with the maximum wage in place, he didn't get a pay rise. He went from the 3rd division to the 1st division and didn't get a pay rise.
I see. That's why Jimmy Hill pushed for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, because this is interesting, because I think this is just briefly, in those days, basically any profits made just went into the pockets of the club directors and owners. It didn't really go to the footballers at all. And
you say that, but if you look at the Coventry City accounts back then, there was no profit being made.
I wasn't there.
They were losing money. They needed to sell players every year, just like clubs now.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they did invest some of the money, the Reg's transfer fee, into players, but they didn't spend it all, because they had debts at the time.
Because Jimmy's argument was that it wasn't, the players weren't benefiting as much as they should have been doing, because at the end of the day, people are paying to see the players, aren't they? Not the directors, which is what his argument was.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's gone ridiculously way, way beyond anybody's imagination now, with the fees as they are now.
Yeah.
And I don't think Jimmy Hill back in those days thought it was ever going to be that way. It's the way it's gone. But it's incredible to think what they couldn't earn. And like he says, he's jumped from the 3rd division. He's the England international. he's gone to Chelsea. The fee in today's money would be about $500,000. 25,000. I've just did a bit of an inflation on it.
Yeah. Well, in inflation terms, yes, but not in football inflation terms. I think his fee would be about 30 or 40 million.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking what the club could have done with that 25,000. That's a big lump of money, isn't it? When you're saying we were struggling. But
the other factor to bear in mind, Claudio, is that back then in the 50s, all clubs had a big playing staff. If you look at the list of the playing staff in the mid 50s, there were like 38, 40 professionals. They could put out a reserve team who all had quite a bit of first team experience. So that to keep those on £20 a week or thereabouts was quite expensive for the club.
Yeah, especially with 6 to get it.
It didn't cost much to go to games, did it?
I say 6 months, wherever it was.
Yeah. So he moved. The other factor the reason he left, he told me, was because he lost his England place, and he knew that he couldn't regain it at City. He had to move to a first division club. And the irony was that he never played for England again.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it?
It's a terrible shame.
Look at the list of keepers before Banks got involved, and I've not heard of hardly any of them. That's the one at Spurs that doesn't spring out. I've got a Colin MacDonald here. I don't know who he played for.
Burnley.
Yeah, there's a couple of others.
He only got caps because Burnley won the league.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. I'm thinking. So it's a shame.
The best two between Reg and Banks were Eddie Hopkinson of Bolton and Alan Hodgkinson of Sheffield United. But there were some duds. Ron Bainham got some caps of Luton. He got some caps.
Is that the Alan Hodgkinson who was the goalie coach? Was it at Coventry?
Yes.
I've played football with his son. He was at Bubbenhall, believe it or not. He was only about 10 years younger than me. Yeah.
He was very small. He was only about 5'8".
Well, his son wasn't big either. That's interesting.
So just to talk about his time at Chelsea, he played far more games for Chelsea than he did for Coventry. 148 games between 56 and 61 when he lost his place to Peter Bonetti. But Chelsea, in those days, Chelsea were renowned for scoring a lot of goals and conceding a lot. He played. Jimmy Greaves came through while Reg was at Chelsea. Peter Sillett was there. Peter and John Sillett were there. Alan Dix was there. Another Coventry connection, and Brian Nicholas. I don't know if you remember him. He was at Chelsea. But I looked at their goals for and against for the 5 years that Reg was there, and they scored 98 goals in his last season, but they conceded 100.
I love that.
Yeah, and they never conceded any less than 75 goals any year that Reg was there.
2-3-5. That's the formation.
Yeah.
If everybody, to be honest, Jim, if everybody played that formation now, there'd be loads of goals, wouldn't there?
Of course there would.
5 attackers against 2 defenders, basically, most of the time.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about, he did get a sniff of international because he was in 1958. He was chosen in the 40 players that the World Cup squad would be chosen from.
Wow.
But he was one of the 18 who were dropped when they went down to the final 22. So he went, October 61, he moved to Derby County, and he played 246 games for Derby between 61 and 67. I think Harry Storer signed him for Derby. Do you know that? Do you know? Let me just check that.
Did he win the league with Derby, Harry Storer?
No.
No.
He won the 3rd division.
With Derby?
With Derby, yeah.
Yeah,
he was Harry Storer was the manager of Derby who signed Reg for them, which I think is great, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And he was a great stalwart for Derby. He's highly regarded in Derby. And he played against City quite 4 or 5 times, I think, when we got promotion up to the 2nd division. Yeah, they were higher status than us in the 60s until we won promotion. But that game at Highfield Rd, it was a League Cup tie in the promotion season, and Reg was in goal, and he had a bit of a dust-up with Ray Pointer about 20 minutes from the end, and he actually got booed by the City fans. I never thought I'd hear that. You know, Reg Matthews getting booed by City. So that turned out to be his final season. I think because he ended up at he played to the end of 67-8.
Was Cloughy there at Derby then? Would
no.
Cloughy came in after?
I think so. Oh no, so Brian Clough got rid of him.
Oh, Cloughy.
Yeah. So maybe it was Peter Taylor's revenge.
Oh yes, that's a good point. Yeah. Waiting all these years to his vendetta. He finally got his chance to get one on Reg.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad. That's sad. That season they finished 18th in Division 2. I think from that point on it was turbo rockets for Clough and Taylor, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I remember reading about it. He came in at a point where Derby were basically the place was falling apart, wasn't it? And he completely turned it around. So when he got it right, Cloughy, he was very good, wasn't he?
He certainly was.
Do you think this is obviously nothing to do with Coventry City, but I was thinking about the England team from '58. Obviously, got the World Cup in Sweden. When I've looked at the lineup, and it's obviously got some big names missing because it would have been some of the lads who were in the Munich air disaster.
Yeah,
who would have been playing basically.
Yeah.
England's hopes probably went with that disaster, didn't it, really, as well? Because when I look at the lineup, I'm thinking that's nothing like what would have been. Do you think that's probably right? Because they would have been.
Yeah. Well, Roger Byrne was the regular left back. Duncan Edwards, Tommy Taylor was the regular centre forward, and people like David Pegg, and Johnny Berry was on the verge of the England squad. Eddie Coleman as well. Yeah, it would have been there would have been probably 5 United players in the squad.
Yeah, I was thinking, it makes you wonder what could have been basically in many ways for Manchester United and England.
And there was one player who survived the Munich air crash who was in the squad. Yeah, that was Bobby Charlton.
Of course, yeah.
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 When Reg, I got to know Reg in his last few years, and he did a book signing for me at Waterstones in Coventry, and I've got a lovely photo with all the former players who helped me on that day, and Reg is next to Brian Hill, Danny Thomas, Andy Blair, and Dietmar. It's a lovely picture. And Reg was wonderful, and I stayed in touch with him after that. And I visited him in his home in Kenilworth. he was widowed in his 60s, I think, but he lived alone in a sheltered accommodation in Kenilworth. But I did do a tribute to him when he died, and can I read out some of the comments that people made about?
Oh yeah,
about him?
yeah. Please do. Yes.
Is it Brian Hill, who was a youngster at the club when Reg was there? He said Reg was a smashing fellow, always helped the youngsters, who set an example to all the Coventry ground staff at the time. I played at centre forward in those days, and if you dared challenge him for a ball in the penalty area, he would cuff you around the ears. And then Peter Hill, who played alongside Reg, and was later the trainer under Jimmy Hill. He said Reg was a slightly nervous lad, but once he was in a goalie's jersey, he was amazing. He was lithe like a cat with fantastic reactions. In those days, we trained at Highfield Rd, and he was always the last off the pitch, asking people to hit shots at him. He was about 5'10" tall, quite small in comparison to today's top keepers, but he was superb in the air and had a great punch. He needed to, because back then goalkeepers didn't have the protection from referees that they have now. Lowell Harvey had memories of that famous cup tie at Huddersfield in '55. He said Huddersfield were in the first division, we were third division. They had a super team with 4 or 5 internationals. We were 3-1 down with half an hour left, and but for Reg, it would have been 8 or 9. He saved everything that day, and the City fans gave us such great support that we scored 2 late goals to get a draw. On the train back to Coventry, the team walked through the train and they all shook the hand of every City fan. Isn't that amazing?
Fantastic.
Yeah. Gordon Nutt, who played with Reg, he said, Reg and I had so much fun as kids at Coventry. We were always getting up to mischief. A few of us would hide Reg's bike and once hoisted it up the flagpole on the main stand. He was such a naturally talented goalkeeper who controlled his goal area so well. You always felt safe when Reg was behind you. You were never going to ship a lot of goals. Stan Smith was a senior player when Reg was a youngster, and he saw his talent immediately. I knew Reg was a natural from the first time I saw him play. The apprentices used to do the cleaning in the morning, sweeping the terraces, cleaning the toilets, and then train in the afternoons. First team keeper Alf would coach Reg, and they had similar styles. They both loved to come off their lines and attack the ball. Reg used to tell us that if he called for the ball, it was his, and if we got in the way, he would treat us like an opposition player and woe betide you if you got the full weight of Reg into you. And finally, George Curtis. I made my debut for City at Newport in April '56, a week after Reg made his England debut at Hampden. He was marvellous that day. He never stopped talking, giving me advice and generally helping me. Before the match, he said to me, when I shout, get out of the way. It's my ball. At some point in the game, I heard the shout from Reg, and the next thing I knew, I was lying on the ground, feeling very sore. I told you to get out of the way, said Reg. From then on, I always listened to him. He was fearless. His pre-match nervousness, when he could be found having a cigarette in the toilets to help calm the nerve, belied a man who was scared of nothing on the pitch. He commanded his area so well, and I'm sure a lot of my bossiness was picked up from Reg in those early days. He was a great friend, and I will miss him a lot.
That's a great tribute.
Wonderful tributes, aren't they?
It really are. And I love this old-fashioned keeper of just taking everybody out.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've played with a couple of lads like that, and they land on you and they go, well, I've told you to get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. Wouldn't we love to have a goalkeeper like that nowadays? It'd be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. It just doesn't happen now, does it? I don't think. I think that kind of goalkeeper has well and truly gone, basically.
Yeah, he was. Oh, those tributes speak for themselves. You don't need any more words, do you?
No.
And from a man like George, who was fearless and himself, and obviously learned, his bossiness from Reg.
Well, I mean, the fact you put him on the deck, and even at 18, George is built like a brick outhouse.
Yeah.
Incredible. So what about the back end of his career then? What did he do after he finished playing?
He went to work at Massey Ferguson.
Right. Okay.
And he worked with a lot of other former City players like Ron Farmer, Brian Nicholas, Ernie Machin.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
One of the best players ever to play at Coventry. I think you got Reg Matthews, Ernie Machin, Ron Farmer. I mean, Machin and Farmer pretty much play throughout the whole 60s in that team.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Imagine working at Massey's though, if you're a fan.
Yes.
And they're there. It would have been brilliant, wouldn't it?
Well, I used to know a very good friend of mine when we were growing up called Ian Campbell from Leamington. And he played for Massey's, and he knew Ron Farmer. He said he was a fantastic mentor to him when he was playing for Massey's. So that's Reg's story, and sadly, the smoking caught up with him because he died of emphysema. Really, really sad because it was a lovely man, and I do know. Somebody told me many years ago that one of his yellow England jerseys, and it was like a roll-up woolen jumper, was in a frame, pride of place at Cowden Court School, which was his primary school, in Coventry. And I did have contact with his son for a few years after he passed away, and at one stage they were going to donate one of his jerseys to the club's archives, but it never actually happened for various reasons.
We might have to pursue that.
Yeah.
Right, wouldn't it? Is the shirt still at the school? Is it
the jumper? Yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's so should be in a Coventry City museum somewhere, shouldn't it? I mean, because that's incredible to have that, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I've got to say thank you to Pauline Hughes' suggestion. This was Pauline's in the early 80s and still goes and watches the City. Very keen. I was at Blackburn away last season. She was there with Paul. It's a friend of mine in the stand, standing up with everybody else.
Oh, wonderful!
I know. If you got the bug, it doesn't matter, does it? So she's had the bug a long time.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you, Paul, again, because he asked us to do the Wallace and Ferguson one, but we can't use his suggestions every week, can we?
And yes, if you want to talk about any particular part of our Sky Blues history, just please email Jim at claryborton@gmail.com, and any era, any time. It could be even to do with buildings, to do with Coventry City, anything. Yeah. We'll be happy to, and we'll find enough to talk about. We can even put in a couple of different subjects in one show quite easily. Yeah. Before we end tonight, for those who are watching on YouTube, if you're not listening to it on Spotify, I've got a load of shirts behind me. And I said to Jim about our Sky Blue shirt, because obviously every year now we seem to have a new shirt. And this year we've gone back to a traditional Sky Blue shirt, but obviously we've got white shorts. And I was asking about the introduction of the Sky Blue shirt in the 60s, because obviously we played in white with a royal blue collar and cuffs. And I just wanted to know how can we ended up with Sky Blue, basically. So that's the question, Jim.
I don't know.
I know, because you had Sky Blue in the early years, didn't we? Way back.
We did, yes. And there was obviously something to do with the Coventry blue, but how JH came upon sky blue, I'll have to look back in the books and see if it was ever mentioned by JH.
Because we know that Leeds had all white because they wanted to look like Real Madrid, and we're surmising that I think Jimmy wanted to have something similar and all
continental style.
Continental style, yeah. But obviously he didn't go with white because Leeds had white. I think you mentioned that we had an all singular colour before even Liverpool did, because they're they're famous for playing in all red, whereas they actually had white shorts and white socks when they won the league in the 60s. Yeah. So if anybody was wondering, we'll have to do a bit more research on that, I think, because it'd be, because I mean, why sky blue? It could have been anything, couldn't it?
Yeah, and it dazzled, didn't it?
Yeah.
When you look back at the kits in the early 60s, even the kit that we had before the sky blue, it looks the sky blue looks so, what's the word, progressive.
Yeah.
With the shorts were shorter. The necks were, it was a round neck, wasn't it? With the blue and white piping and around the sleeves as well, and those phenomenal socks with the blue and white tops. Do you remember?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And also we ditched the Bantam badge, didn't we, as well?
We did. Yes. Well, we ditched the nickname.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So how soon after did the Sky Blues nickname come in then? Was that fairly almost immediately?
That's an interesting one. I did research on that, and I think it was Derek Henderson, the Coventry Telegraph, came up with it quite a way into the season, maybe 3 months into the season. When one of his reports, he called them the Sky Blues, and it stuck. I don't think they set out to initially to change the nickname.
Well, Mr. Henderson, brilliant.
Yeah. So the other thing we've got to mention, it's to do with Coventry City's history, which is the site of Highfield Road. Mm-hmm. And you and I know, Claudio, that the plinth or the plaque that was where in Hill Fields, where Highfield Road was vandalised and then stolen not long ago. And myself and Lionel Bird, another historian, and Pete Witherow have been working on a project to get a new plaque. And the official unveiling of that new plaque on the site of Highfield Road will take place next Monday morning, the 9th of September at 11 o'clock. And there'll be people from the football club, from the Coventry City Council who have helped us achieve this. And we're hopeful of a former player being present. And it's going to be a grand unveiling. It won't last very long, but if anybody who wants to pop along and see the unveiling, it's a lovely plaque that we've designed in marble. And we just hope and pray that it won't get vandalized again, because it's so annoying.
And I know it's taken a lot of work to get to this point. So congratulations to everybody who has contributed to this, because it's a major thing. It's a major thing. And yeah, it's fantastic, Jim. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And the reason why it's being done on the 9th of September is that it's the 125th anniversary of the very first game at Highfield Road in 1899. So there's a historical link there.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to leave it. Now, you're away next week, aren't you? I believe you're on your holiday.
Yes, I am on holiday, yes.
Are you anywhere nice and sunny, or hoping it's going to be
South Cotswolds?
So funny.
Yes. Taking advantage of the international break.
I don't blame you. I think
back for Watford.
Yeah, that should be interesting. Of course, sell out. That should be good. And hopefully we'll find a bit of form when we
Yeah,
play well.
I've got a funny feeling we're gonna have another 2 or 3 games without a decent result.
Don't say that.
But hey, I'm not a very good predictor. You know, I finished bottom of the London Sports Club Prediction League.
Well,
So
I was looking at these fixtures coming up, and actually, we did all right in these fixtures last season.
yeah.
So you never know, do you? You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. That's why we keep going. That's why we keep supporting the club.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening, and also if you're watching on YouTube, remember, contact us if you want to talk about any particular part of our Sky Blue history. Contact Jim at claryborton at gmail.com, and we'll do our best to talk about any subject to do with Coventry City.
Yeah.
So I think we can call this a wrap.
Okay. Good night, Claudio.
Good night, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yes. Good night.
Good night.
Media company dismissed. Thank you very much.